Hello and welcome to the 2021 Ward 11 City Council Candidate Forum. My name is Michelle Hemingway Tatum, and I am the president of the Windham Community Council Board of Directors. Today's Ward 11 City Council Candidate Forum is brought to you by the Windham Community Council, Tangletown Neighborhood Association, Nokomis East Neighborhood Association, and Hale Page Diamond Lake Community Association. We are 5 of the 70 officially neighborhood associations recognized by the City of Minneapolis. I'd like to thank our forum partners, the League of Women Voters Minneapolis Chapter, TPT, and MCN, as well as each of our Minneapolis City Council Ward 11 candidates. Neighborhood associations play a critical role in supporting our residents to be informed and engaged in our elections and in the work of our city. You may be aware that this fall, Minneapolis residents will be voting on 3 charter amendments that will determine the future of public safety, rent control, and the structure of our local government. We'd like to invite you to a Charter Amendment Public Information event on Saturday, October 16th at 10 a.m. The event will feature advocates in favor of and opposed to each charter amendment, making their case and helping you decide which way to vote. You may attend in person at Mayflower Church in Southwest Minneapolis or watch the live stream on Saturday, October 16th at 10 a.m. Learn more and register to attend at tangletown.org/vote. And now we turn to tonight's event. We are grateful to the League of Women Voters who will be moderating tonight's forum. Thanks so much for joining us, and now I'll pass things off to Jerry Nelson, who will be moderating this event.
Good evening and welcome to the Minneapolis Ward 11 City Council Candidate Forum. I'm Jerry Nelson, a longtime member of League of Women Voters ABC, which covers Anoka County and neighboring Champlin. And I'll be your moderator tonight. All candidates that are running for this seat are here tonight, and the Ward 11 is located in the south central part of Minneapolis. It has residential neighborhoods, vibrant local business corridors, and excellent access to parks. Ward 11 is bordered to the south by Richfield and Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. The ward is home to many important natural resources, including Lake Nokomis, Diamond Lake, and Minnehaha Creek. There is no live audience tonight, but this forum is live streamed on the LWV Minneapolis Facebook page and broadcast on cable channel 6 in the Twin Cities area. The recording will be available unedited for viewing on the League of Women Voters Minneapolis Facebook page and will soon be on their website. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Sponsorship of this program is a public service provided to you, providing you with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss important issues. The views expressed here tonight are those of the candidates and not those of the League of Women Voters or the sponsoring neighborhood organizations. Just a reminder that Election Day is Tuesday, November 2nd, and early voting begins this Friday, September 17th. On your ballot, Minneapolis residents will have the opportunity to vote for the offices of mayor, city council, park board seats, and the Board of Estimate and Taxation. And we already heard about the charter amendments. We'll hear more about them tonight. Tonight you will hear from 5 candidates for the Ward's 11th City Council seat. As a reminder, Minneapolis has ranked choice voting elections instead of primaries. You have the power to rank 3 candidates in order of your preference on the November ballot. So as you hear from the candidates, consider not just your first choice, but your second and third choices as well. This is a wonderful way to really have an impact on who gets elected. So our candidates participating tonight are Dylan Gurna, Jeremy Schroeder, Emily Koski, Kurt Anderson, and Albert Ross. We'll start the candidate forum with the opening statements. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds for their opening and closing statements. The order of speakers was determined by drawing numbers, and we'll be rotating it throughout for each question. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond to the questions. Our timekeeper, Judy, I should remember your last name. That's okay. We'll have a 15-second sign when 15 seconds are up, and also a stop sign to alert the candidates of time constraints. I've been emphasizing to the candidates that they don't have to take the full time. Once they've said what they need to say, they can, and that gives us a chance to get to more of your questions. So we really like to do that. So we have gotten a bunch of questions already on Facebook, and you can submit more on Facebook chat and in the chat during the forum. Questions that are unclear, hostile, or of a personal nature will not be asked. Those that fall into the same general topic area may be consolidated to allow us to get to as many topics as possible. The questions that are submitted become the property of the League of Women Voters Minneapolis. All right, so let's begin with our opening statements. And Dylan Gurna, you're first.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this, as well as the neighborhood associations for sponsoring tonight's event. My name is Dylan Gurna. I am a candidate for Minneapolis City Council to represent Ward 11. A little bit about me: I've lived in Minneapolis now since I was 18 years old. I was born and raised in a rural mining community in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, raised by my incredible single mother and my grandparents. Throughout our upbringing, we struggled like many of our neighbors, relying sometimes on assistance to make ends meet. After coming out openly gay to my family, I decided to move to a larger city, and I chose Minneapolis. Over the course of my time in Minneapolis, I've been primarily a renter. I've lived all throughout our city, most recently prior to moving to Ward 11 on our north side. And then my ex-partner and I, we moved to Ward 11. Professionally speaking, I currently have the honor and privilege of serving the over 1.2 million residents at the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, managing public initiatives for our county. In addition to that experience, I have served in leadership capacities throughout a number of different industries, and I've been a small business owner, and I look forward to tonight's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy Schroeder. Schrader, okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. My name is Jeremy Schrader, and I'm proud to be the Ward 11 City Council member. So for almost 20 years, I've worked as a community advocate, working on creating more affordable housing, fighting climate change, and creating a more just criminal justice system. Through my time, I've done that as an attorney, as an executive director of multiple nonprofits, and now as a city council member. I'm very honored to have this job. I believe in the work and believe in this job. What I've heard from my constituents, and I would love the neighborhood that I live in, is the need for more affordable housing, for a climate that's just, and for a public safety system that works for everybody. And I'm really proud of the results I've been able to deliver. What that looks like is being able to quickly change our emergency shelter program when we saw that not enough of our neighbors were being housed, but also think long term and create more affordable housing through an inclusionary zoning policy that I authored. What that looks like is continuing to fund our police department while asking the hard questions of how do we hold our police officers accountable and how do we get other resources to get citizens the help that they need. That work is ongoing. I'm really proud of the work I've been able to do, and I look forward to having a deeper discussion tonight.
Thank you. Emily Koski.
Hi, Thank you. My name's Emily Koski, and I'm running to represent you on the Minneapolis City Council. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and for the neighborhood organizations tonight. As a member of League of Women Voters Unit 1, it's a little surreal to be on the flip side here this evening, but I'll tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm running for Minneapolis City Council. I have lived in this city my whole life, and I now live in the Page neighborhood, which is near Pearl Park, with my husband Mike and our 2 kids who go to our Minneapolis public schools. I stay connected to our community in a variety of ways. I have been a coach at Pearl Park. I also have been on the Hale Site Council and the Waite Park Community School Site Council, along with the Waite Park Neighborhood Association. And I'm currently the Director of Client Development at a marketing and consulting staffing firm where I connect businesses, small to large, here in the Twin Cities. And the reason why I wanted to run for Minneapolis City Council is because I believe in this community, and I believe that we need leaders who are going to listen, who want to learn, and who are going to stay immersed in our community. We are at a pivotal moment, I believe, in our city, and I want to make sure that we have leaders that are going to bring us together and make sure that we build a Minneapolis that we're all proud of. I am excited to be here tonight and continue to learn, and so again, my name's Emily Koski.
Thank you. Kurt Anderson.
Oh, thank you. First of all, I want to join everybody else in saying a profound thanks to the League of Women Voters. For decades, you've been the go-to source for neutral and fair community education in the political sphere. I just can't thank you enough. I've seen you in presidential debates going back decades. You can see that this gray hair indicates it. My name is Kurt Anderson. I actually have filed as Kurt Michael Anderson. Rather than go into great detail about myself, I put that in writing in my Dropbox folder, Kurt Michael Anderson, 2021.org. And that is my campaign. I'm a $0 Dropbox campaign. I hope to be able to file a report or not file a report showing that I come in under the $250 of campaign expenditure. But why am I running? Well, I'm a 36-year resident of Minneapolis. I will leave you to the website for the details. I am very concerned about crime and law enforcement. I do think we need to do much better. We have models elsewhere in the country that can do much better. Number 2, I think the Minnesota 2040 has some good ideas. The triplexes, the duplexes, the multifamily housing, the unrelated persons living together, very important. I think it misses the boat both on home ownership and also on racial equity. I'm concerned about budget. We have not only a 5% increase coming up this year, but consecutive increases coming up in the coming years. Very important. The other thing is I'm a little bit concerned. I think there has to be a small tweak to ranked choice voting. Stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Albert Ross.
First off, I would like to thank the moderator. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for and I'd like to thank the people at home for taking time out your day to be with us here tonight. The reason I'm running for office in Minneapolis is because crime is at an all-time high in our community. Businesses are boarding up because of fear that they will be looted, robbed, or worse. Police all over this state are retiring early or leaving their posts, which means less police to patrol our street if crime occur. And on top of that, there are prominent leaders in our city councilmen calling for the disbursement of our police department in the midst of rising crime. I'm running for office because I love this city way too much to see it being overran by criminals and crooked politicians and special interest groups. That's why I'm running for office. To give you a little bit of information about me, I'm a CEO, the CFO, and a COO of a small, growing construction business. And I'm from Mississippi, and I've been in this city for over 25 years, and I've seen a huge 360 in how things have turned around in our community. That's why I'm running for office, to fix those things.
Thank you. All right, so let's get to the questions. The first one will go to Jeremy Schroeder. And so listen carefully. This is it has been proposed that the voters of Minneapolis consider an amendment to the city charter that would eliminate the current police department and instead establish a Department of Public Safety. The status of this ballot initiative is still being litigated. However, we would like you to respond with your position on the intent of this amendment, which would employ a comprehensive public health approach to the delivery of functions by a Department of Public Safety, with those specific functions to be determined by the mayor and city council, which will not be subject to exclusive mayoral power over its establishment, maintenance, and command, and which could include licensed peace officers, police officers, if necessary, to fulfill its responsibilities for public safety. The department would be led by a commissioner nominated by the mayor and appointed by the council. The police department and its chief would be removed from the city charter. The public safety department could include police officers, but the minimum funding requirement would be eliminated. So, Jeremy Schroeder, do you support this proposal, yes or no, and why?
I do support this proposal. I'm one of the authors of the Transforming Public Safety Charter Amendment, which was the council-led amendment, which I would throw in, I think had better language and was a little more clear. But that aside, both of these amendments would have the exact same outcome. The charter is our high-level document for the city, which says which departments are there, but I do want to clear up some misinformation. You don't have to be in the charter to be a department in the city. We have ordinances and a budget for the rest of that. But what this would do is, understand from the last year that we've had. It would say that we have issues, but it would put front and center the need for public safety, the need to keep people safe, the need to have police officers and have a better response. Learning from what other cities have done, we can have a department that addresses the need for armed officers, as well as responding better when people call for help on 911. If they need a mental health emergency, we can have those responders get there. When victims need services, they can get those. When someone is homeless, we can also get them better services.
Thank you. Emily Koski.
Oh, thank you. No, I do not support the public safety amendment for a few reasons. First of all, I don't agree with the language that says police if necessary, because I believe that in our public safety ecosystem that police are necessary. I also do not agree with this department to be overseen by the city council and the mayor together. I believe that that's an inefficient way for us to see clarity and have accountability for our public safety department. And lastly, this department would have to be enacted within 30 days of when it was began, or if it were to go into place. And as we just discussed, that there is a commissioner that will be appointed, and I believe I'm in recruiting, and that to me is a role that would need to be, could be a 6-9 month role to recruit, and I think that could be very detrimental to our city to think that we could get this department set up within 30 days.
Thank you. Kurt Michael Anderson.
Well, thank you very much. I am very strongly opposed to this amendment. When we have people carrying armed forces around with the intention of law enforcement, one person politically needs to be in charge of that. I don't want a committee of 4 out of 13 council members balkanizing our police department effort. We need one person to direct it and one person to hold responsible for it. I'm very concerned that we're conveying the entirely wrong message. The stats are going up. We need a very strong executive control of this. We do not want to balkanize the police department, so I'm strongly opposed to it.
Thank you. Albert Ross.
I'd like to piggyback off Kurt a little bit here. I strongly oppose the charter that's been put toward the voters. I think it's a terrible decision for our city, and we will suffer if our police are taken away. If someone breaks in my house, I don't want a mental health specialist to come and talk the guy down or talk him out. I want a trained, licensed police officer to come in, get that guy out, and when he goes to jail, then you can have a mental health worker talk to that guy and figure out why he broke in my home or anyone else's home. For all you folks out there that have those signs in your yard, we watch, we call. Well, you know what? If they take our police away, who are you going to call? So I'm strongly against it, and I think we need our police department to patrol our city. Without those guys, we're doomed.
Thank you. Dylan Gurna.
I do not support this amendment, nor, just to be clear, do I support any other effort to defund or abolish the police department. or any language that makes it feel better about that same goal. Look, we know that we need to reform our public safety systems, both in this city and across the country. And we need to also make investments into mental health co-responder programs, violence prevention, and some of the other ideas that have been shared already. This is fundamentally going to change the way that our city functions, and so much is riding on this November's election. Everything from businesses deciding to renew leases to residents making a decision on whether they want to continue to raise their families in our city or move to another city or another area.
Thank you. Next question. What is your vision for public safety in Minneapolis and Ward 11 specifically? What actionable steps can be taken to get us there? Emily Koski, you're first.
Thank you. So my vision for public safety is a space that, when I think about this, I think of our public safety ecosystem. And in that, I see police. I don't think of them as just if necessary. I see police officers in that. Within that ecosystem, I also see our other emergency response, such as our firefighters and also our 911 call center. In order for us to have a working and strong public safety system, we need to make sure that our 911 call center is part of that. And I want to make sure that those are all well staffed. We want to make sure that we have adequate amount of officers to support our communities. I also want to make sure that we're looking at public safety programs that are beyond policing, and making sure that we're thinking about also continuing to create programs within our Office of Violence Prevention. So.
Thank you. Kurt Michael Anderson.
Thank you very much. First of all, I represent mental health respondents in court in Minneapolis. I have lengthy video of a day before George Floyd died, an African-American man with a very bad decompensation being taken down, unfortunately. But it was an excellent example of what mental health professionals can do. Four squads responded to the incident. Ambulance attendants were present. Everybody teamed up. The man ended up safely in the hospital. I support a multifaceted approach to public safety. I do think, however, that we do need to have a much stronger, more robust police force. The solution to the police problems may be counterintuitive, but the solution is more police, not less. Chief Arredondo has asked for more police. He's right. We need more. Thank you.
Thank you. Albert Ross.
Can you repeat the question for me, please?
Sure. What is your vision for public safety in Minneapolis and Ward 11 specifically? What actionable steps can be taken to get us there?
For one, I would definitely recommend a racial equity training for all of our officers yearly. I think the racial divide, the racial issues that plague our city is one of the worst in the nation. This state has so much to offer to all the citizens within its grasp. And to leave the racial injustice that goes on within this city, I think it needs to be tackled. I think once we tackle that, then we can do a better job at getting those officers with all the write-ups and disciplinary write-ups that shouldn't be within our force. We need to get those guys out of there. I wouldn't want them patrolling my street if a guy has 17 write-ups for causing problems within the community. So I think we need to do a better job at getting those guys out of there, and then we can try and bridge the racial gap that exists within our community.
Thank you. Dylan Gurna.
Absolutely. So I think we start with the chief's vision, right? The chief is committed to reform, and then we will look at officer accountability, training, as it's already been mentioned. And we look at how we continue to make investments in staffing so that our officers can build relationships in our community and that they aren't so bogged down by long extended call times that they can't get out and talk to business owners and talk to homeowners and residents throughout our city. We also need to look at 100% compliance with body cameras. They're there to protect the officer and our community. We have to look at the ways that we recruit and the ways that we retain officers. By investing in officer wellness, looking at the mind, body, and spirit of our officers. Look, at the end of the day, our officers serve our community and they deal with us in our darkest moments. We need to make sure that we support them. This is a lot of stuff to talk about in 1 minute, so I encourage you to visit my website, dgmpls.com, to read more specifics.
Thank you. Jeremy Schrader.
Oh, thank you. We've heard a lot of good ideas so far from the candidates, and frankly, a lot of them have already been tried. We have racial bias training after the killing of Justine Damon. We added more trainings to work on racial bias. We worked to work on de-escalation. At the time of the murder of George Floyd, the police department had a record budget and a record number of officers. I voted for an increased MPD budget at the time to make sure that we would have extra officers to do the community policing that everyone talked about. And what we can see is that that system is not working for everybody. My vision is to have a more holistic public safety system that involves police. We will continue to have police, but also has so much more. When you look at Ward 11, we had problems with not enough patrols before losing over 200 officers, and we need to look at what is going to reduce crime, such as increasing the number of investigators in the area.
Okay, we've got one more question on police issues. And so I think some of you have already covered some of it, so if you just have something to add. What is the role of violence prevention in delivering public safety services, and what steps do you propose to meet this need? And we will start with Kurt Michael Anderson.
Thank you very much. First of all, there's no dichotomy between effective policing and violence prevention. Police officers themselves should know how to de-escalate, should be mediators, in addition to being armed officers when they need to be. But as I hope I demonstrated in my previous answer, other professional support is also very important. And this, as Mr. Schroeder indicated, holistic approach is very important, but there needs to be more. There needs to be more. Thank you.
Albert Ross.
First off, I think that the most important thing that we should do is have folks in the police department that actually care about the community that they're serving. We don't want folks serving our community that only cares about half the community. We got to have folks in there that's willing to go out in the community, do the hard work, and try and bridge the racial divide or the racial uncomfort that exists in our community. I think once we get those kind of folks in our police department, then our police department will do much better than what it's doing now. We got to have better oversight of our police. And if I'm elected to represent Ward 11, I'll do everything I can to push our elected leaders in Congress to pass the George Floyd Police Reform Bill. I think that bill has great things in it that would be great for our community. I don't have a lot of time to say this, but if you go on my website, www.albertross.org, you'll be able to see in detail, in depth, what we are talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Dylan Gurna.
Absolutely. So I view violence prevention and the role of violence prevention in our city as connecting individuals in our communities to education and resources, victim support for those who are victimized by crime in our community, connecting and partnering with community groups who know the individuals who live all throughout our city, and they know those who are also committing crimes and victimizing our neighbors. In addition to that, information and resources and a connection to support programs that can help people who are facing a challenging experience, whether that be homelessness or job insecurity or whatever the challenges that they're facing. I also view that as part of the violence prevention role.
Thank you. Jeremy Schrader.
Thank you. I think Dylan gave a great description of the violence interruption work. I think the one part I would add is it's just one part. It needs to work with armed law enforcement. It needs to work with our community advocates. It is really about interrupting the cycle of violence. Right now, we have a very reactive system, and we can do better. We can learn from other cities about how they're able to address violence and stop the harm that's been coming to families.
Thank you. Emily Koski.
Thank you. I believe in investing in our Office of Violence Prevention. I think that we need to make sure that we're funding this more. I think we need to make sure that we're increasing the education around what our Office of Violence Prevention does. And because I believe that this is where our community does feel more connected. And I also want to make sure that it isn't just standing alone. They need to make sure that the Office of Violence Prevention is also working with our Minneapolis Police Department. It's also working with our 911 call center, because it's when those departments are working together that I think that we can make the biggest impact.
Thank you. All right. Charter Amendment number 1 on government structure appears on the ballot for a response by voters. Shall the Minneapolis City Charter be amended to adopt a change in its form of government to an executive mayor legislative council structure to shift certain powers to the mayor, consolidating administrative authority over all operating departments under the mayor, and eliminating the executive committee? Do you support this amendment? Yes, no, and why? And we'll start with Albert Ross.
First off, I'd like to say no, I don't support this amendment. I don't think no one person should hold that much power. That's why we're America right now, because we didn't want to be ruled by a king. I think it should work together. It should work like it's working now, with everybody playing a role in it, and that just kind of keep oversight to make sure that it stays a level, so the playing field can be even for all folks within the city.
Thank you. Dylan Gurna.
I do support a strong mayor system. I think it's important that our city department leaders and our city in general understand that really who, at the end of the day, is responsible for the delivery of services. And I think it increases accountability. I think it adds a lot of or takes away a lot of barriers or lack of understanding of how the city works for the community, and it truly keeps the accountability at the mayor's feet.
Thank you. Jeremy Schrader.
I don't agree with it. I think it makes a lot of sense to look at ways the city could run better after the very difficult year we had. But one of the departments that has done amazing work is our Department of Health. Like, they've worked on creating more food security when many parts of the city became a food desert. They've been working on handling the global pandemic that is happening right now, and they operate under the current city system where they report to the mayor with oversight by the city council. Creating a strong mayor system would have all of our departments operate the same way the police department. And as we've talked about how we all would say there's need for change there, to go and have that be our management system, I think it's the wrong direction.
Okay. Emily Koski.
Yes, I do support this amendment. Why I support this is because I think it brings clarity to our city workers and to our communities. I believe that it gives us an executive branch, which is our mayor, and then would be the legislative branch, which would be our city council, and that creates a checks and balance for our city. And I do believe that this brings accountability and, again, clarity. Also, other cities, large like Minneapolis, are run this way. St. Paul, for example, also Chicago, New York, to just name a few. And the other piece of this is that I was really impressed with the amount of research that went into this proposal, and when they were preparing this. I know that they interviewed lots of both current and past city council members, city coordinators, mayors, department heads, and when they worked together to think about how we should move forward to work efficiently and effectively, they felt that this was a great way for our city to move forward as well.
Thank you. Kurt Michael Anderson.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to invoke this gray balding head. This debate is as old as the city of Minneapolis itself, and I'm not quite that old, but the weak mayor system in Minneapolis has been an issue practically since the city was chartered. In general, I support in principle that there should be a separation of the executive and the legislative functions, and the city council is the legislative body, the mayor is the executive. So I would strongly, I would mildly support this amendment. We have had a pretty good streak of luck with a weak mayor system, and it's been rather unique, but I do think, echoing Ms. Koski, that we would be better off if we recognize the distinction between an executive and a legislative function and sharpened up that distinction. So I'm giving it my mild support. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dylan Gurna, you're next for the next question. Knowing that there could be some changes among city government leaders after this election, how would you work together with the mayor and the city council to avoid fragmentation and inefficiency as is currently perceived in Minneapolis government?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I think what's most important and critical on day one is to really understand our current operations, what it looks like under our current structure, and what gaps in city services to our community would exist if specific city leaders are no longer in those positions. And I think we need to be real about, both the perception currently and what it could be like should that happen. And we have to acknowledge that there would be some type of a gap in how we deliver services until we are able to streamline operations. We can put a lot on paper, folks, but actions speak far louder than words, and we historically have put a lot on paper as a city, and in some ways we have made advancements, but it does take time to make change in government.
Thank you. Jeremy Schrader.
Well, I would continue the work I've been able to do. I think besides the headlines, I've been able to make alliances across all my council members, as well as across the department, as well as the mayor. I've been working with the mayor on our shared values of creating more affordable housing, creating a sustainable environment, even when we disagree. And I think that it's something that really comes from my background. I worked in the nonprofit sector where I worked with very large coalitions with very different viewpoints, but we had a shared mission that we came together around. That's the same attitude I brought to City Hall. I'm currently the vice chair of the Biz Committee, and I chair my chair is Lisa Goodman, who we work well to make sure that the city keeps running. You haven't heard a lot about it because we try and keep the drama to a minimum and make sure that folks in the city get everything that they need.
Thank you. Emily Koski.
I have not seen our current city council work and be able to work together and efficiently and effectively together. And I think the core at that is making sure that if I was in office, that I would make sure that I'm building trust with my colleagues. That includes the mayor and also our city council members and also the department heads. Building that trust means making sure that we're engaging in conversation, we're listening, and I think the most important piece is that we know that we're not always going to see eye to eye, but that we approach every conversation and thinking that, what do I get to learn today? And that's the way that I will make sure to build trust, and I'll make sure that everybody knows that I want to make sure that we're working together, because I think that's one of the most important things that we need to see right now in our current city council.
Thank you. Kurt Michael Anderson.
Thank you very much. I want to just address this in the context of one specific concern I have, which is it's time, folks. The patterns of segregation that have existed in Minneapolis have been going on for too long, and it's time to really get proactive, up our game. And in the spirit of the question, in response to the question, I think one of the things that I could do as a Ward 11 member, in addition to being present for my constituents here in the ward, is to get on the ground and with other council members in other wards, see what's going on. What's it going to take to reach out and break these social customs that have been so unfortunately underlined in the last year? I'd like to get on the ground, not to pick out a particular one, maybe the 5th Ward or some other ward where predominantly people of color, and really start a communication process that goes deep. Thank you.
Thank you. Albert Ross.
Okay, thanks for your question. If I'm elected to represent Ward 11, I'll be elected to represent Ward 11. So I'll go above and beyond the call of duty to make sure that we push the agenda of our ward. I will definitely work with the mayor and other council members to make sure that we can get our agenda done for the community. And I am a diligently worker when it comes to working together. And I'll use those skills to work with the council and the mayor to bring Ward 11 to a place that it's currently not, for a better future for everyone within Ward 11.
Thank you. An additional amendment on the ballot addresses rent control. This amendment reads as follows. Shall the Minneapolis City Charter be amended to authorize the City Council to regulate rents on private residential property in the city of Minneapolis? This amendment would authorize the City Council to regulate rents on private residential property in the City of Minneapolis by ordinance, and provide that an ordinance regulating rents on private residential property could be enacted in two different and independent ways. First, the City Council may enact the ordinance, or the City Council may refer to the ordinance as a ballot question to be decided by the voters for an approval at an election. If more than half the votes cast on the ballot question are in favor of its adoption, the ordinance would then take effect 30 days after the election, or at such other time as provided by the ordinance. So, do you support this amendment, yes or no, and why? Jeremy Schrader.
So I do support this. This is something that I have changed my mind on. When I initially came in to office, I had been the policy director for the Minnesota Housing Partnership, working on creating more affordable housing throughout the state. And it was something I thought rent control was too heavy-handed. And so over the last 3 years, I've talked with landlords about like different policies to really look out for their tenants. And every single time they said, well, that's not gonna work. We're just gonna pass on those costs to the tenants. And so eventually it was like, wow, I wish there was some way to control rent. And so it's something that I think I still am very concerned that it'd be heavy-handed. But the voting yes on this allows the city to just start to look at it. I think that if we have landlords that are doubling, tripling rent, adding fees to people that can't, at the time that they can't handle it, the city needs to be able to have some tools to be able to address that, and this would be the start of that.
Thank you. Emily Koski.
Thanks. Yes, I do support this rent control amendment because I want to be clear that this amendment will allow our city council to open up the conversation around rent control. And because I believe that that's the role of the city council, is to make sure that we are the voice of the community, I want to make sure that we can open up that conversation because I believe in renters' rights, and I want to make sure that we have that conversation. That being said, I do not believe in rent control, and I do not believe that that is necessarily a forward-thinking or necessarily an effective way for us to make sure that we have affordable housing here in Minneapolis.
Thank you. Kurt Michael Anderson.
Thank you again. First of all, I do support it. The charter amendment itself is just an enabling amendment. The process of finding an ideal solution to rent control then rests with the city council and then will be submitted to the voters if there's a proposal. I think it's very important to maintain what one author refers to as the 3 S's, the supply, the stability, and the subsidy. And the stability piece is a restraint on rent increases. I want to be very cautious about how that happens. I want to look at case by case. It's a very good thing that this is being done would be done by the city council instead of by mere referendum. The council can vet it, the voters can vote on it. I think it's an excellent way of proceeding, and I do anticipate there will be some effort at rent control, which I would be sympathetic toward.
Thank you. Albert Ross.
Thank you for the question. First, I'd like to say I'm a lifelong Democrat, but yet I agree with the Republicans on this one because I believe that it's just too much government taking over the private sector. No, I will not vote for this, and I don't agree with it. I feel that we must do a better job at providing people with better income within our city so they can afford their rent. The city of Minneapolis have a ton of resources at its grasp, and to not provide those resources and instead try and take over the private sector to put a ton of small business owners out of business, I think it's another terrible decision for our city. And if I'm elected to represent Ward 11, I will not do that. I will leave that market private, and I'll just make sure that we provide better ways to provide better incomes for our citizens.
Thank you. Dylan Gurna.
I do not support this amendment. And, we've heard a couple times that this would allow a conversation or to start digging into it. And to be quite frank, I'm tired of hearing that. We use that a lot to explain away why we haven't done work that we should do on behalf of the residents of our city. I've been a lifelong renter, as the majority of my time in Minneapolis has been renting. In my current situation, I'm renting, and I have not experienced an increase in my rent. However, under some of the proposed ideas, it would allow my landlord to automatically increase my rent. I've lived in some less than ideal situations, having previously rented from one of our city's most notoriously recognized poor landlords. So I think we need to focus on renters' rights, and we need to focus on holding landlords accountable to a living standard and the way that they upkeep their buildings, but I do not support this.
Thank you. Okay, so next question. Given the significant history of racist practices in housing that impacted Ward 11 neighborhoods, how would you support increased access and affordability in housing in Ward 11? What specific locations and formats do you envision? And first we will have Emily Koski.
Thank you. So first, I think we need to acknowledge, yes, the systemic racism that's within our housing practices, and we need to also know that we do need more affordable and more deeply affordable housing in Ward 11. And we also need to recognize that we have a rising population of homeless. So in Ward 11, I want to make sure that we have more access to home ownership for individuals. I'm on the Habitat for Humanity Leadership Council, and that's the direct work that we do, is to make sure that we pull down the barriers to make sure that individuals have access to home ownership that is aligned to wealth, and I want to make sure that we continue to do that here in Ward 11.
Thank you. Kurt Michael Anderson.
Well, to echo some previous comments I made, I think that my neighbors in Ward 11 are finally ready to get down to the business of ending the social customs of segregation. And in particular, I think there's an opportunity to do a constitutional and fair method of addressing this, which is simply identify people whose ancestors have been zoned out or covenanted out of opportunities in the past. I believe that my neighbors on various blocks of the 11th Ward are ready to say, yeah, let's bring some people, let's find some people who are eligible, let's sponsor them. If we can subsidize rents, we can subsidize mortgages as well. Let's integrate housing by moving, and the Minneapolis Association of Realtors has made it its mission to address this as well. So we've got the elements coming together to make this happen. Let's find people who have a legitimate claim based on past covenants, and let's move them, give them the opportunity to move into integrated neighborhoods.
Thank you. Albert Ross.
Thank you. So me, myself, my family, and so many other people of color have felt victim to the racist policies that has been put in place by all the leaders that came out before us. Yeah, we're having a racial reckoning now, and everyone's paying attention to it now. But unless we put policies in place that actually tackle those racial issues with housing in our community, nothing will never change. If I'm elected to represent Ward 11, I will definitely fight for the black and brown people that has been left out of the playing field for so many years. And I'll do everything that I can to make sure that we finally have a voice here at the City Council in Ward 11. There's never been an African American ever to lead Ward 11. And I want to be the first one to do so I can bring the much needed change that we need.
Thank you. Dylan Gurna.
Yeah, as mentioned in the question, we know that there's a history of systemic racism in our ward, and I support a balanced approach to housing that both makes investments in affordable housing options, also creating avenues to home ownership, such as condos, townhomes, and developments like that. I do not think the answer is to continually build apartments throughout our city. And we know that apartment living at times can leave out multi-generational families, our neighbors of color, the aging community, and the disability communities. And so I support a balanced approach, investments in that, and ensuring that we are also supporting those who are looking to acquire homes with resources on city services available and being innovative in our approach to that.
Thank you. Jeremy Schrader.
Thank you. Making sure that we have an affordable, safe, stable place for everyone to live is something that I'm dedicated to and that I've had results. I'm proud of the results that I've been able to do. I'm very proud that Ward 11 has affordable housing. You just need to look to the apartment buildings that butt up right next to the highway or that are very close to the airport. The issue is that they're full. You know, we need to have more affordable housing, and we also need to preserve what we have. On that note, been very active making sure that we have tools to create more housing. I'm most recently the author of the single room occupancy ordinance that would allow there to be a shared bathroom or a shared kitchen. It's no secret on how it's affordable. It's really small. And for some people coming off of homelessness, that's all they need. We need to be thoughtful about that. And then as we look toward building new apartment buildings, I've been the author of the inclusionary zoning, which mandates that there will be affordable housing when new buildings are built.
Thank you. Okay, next question. How would you ensure that a rent stabilization proposal does not impose an undue burden on responsible rental property owners? Kurt Michael Anderson, will you go first, please?
Well, the approach to stability, one of the 3 S's that I mentioned earlier, has to be one that sandpapers some of the great excesses of rent increases. On the other hand, we do need to enlist landlords in the process, as we do with homeowners, in getting stable rents across the city. It's a balancing act. And frankly, I can't sit here right now and show you how it's going to balance out. Everybody needs to be heard, but at the end of the day, we need both affordable housing and that key S, stability in rents. And that's the process. That's why it's being done by city council instead of by referendum, excuse me.
Thank you. Albert Ross.
Thank you. So on this issue, it's one that sits dear with me. We have a ton of great ideas that we've put on our website and policies that we want to enact for this same issue. I would recommend that all of you guys go on our website, www.albertross.org, and check out our policies. If you see something there that you think, if you don't see something there that you think should be there, send us a message. And we'll definitely look at that, we'll review that message, and we'll see how we can incorporate that into our plan. I don't have all the answers, and no one up here does have all the answers. Together with you guys, we can come up with the answers that we need to make our community safe for everyone. Go on our website, check our website out, look at our policies, and I think you'll be happy with what you see.
Thank you. Dylan Gerda.
So striking a balance in providing resources to residents who need it most and renters who need it is really critical to how we move forward in this discussion around housing, the discussion on tenant and landlord relationships, and how we really chart the course for creating innovative strategies. Rent stabilization certainly can help support, in addition, connecting individuals with other resources that are available through existing programs, both at the county and state level, and working through our governmental lines to connect our residents with the resources that they need the most is going to be critical to how we continue to retain residents in our city and renters throughout our city.
Thank you. Jeremy Schrader.
So we desperately need affordable housing landlords. We need that to be a working business model in this city. And how we would make sure as we go forward that we would continue to have affordable housing landlords is I would do the same thing I did on my advanced notice of sale ordinance, as well as the residential energy disclosure. And both of those worked with stakeholders, many conversations with landlords, many conversations with realtors to find out how is this going to actually work for them. The residential energy disclosure is probably the better example. We actually had quite a lot of pushback from realtors, from landlords who were worried this was going to be an infringement. What this policy does is if you're renting a place or buying a home, you get a disclosure on your energy efficiency. It's a great step forward for making sure we're meeting our climate goals, but it's one that we wanted to make sure did not inhibit the selling of a house. And after 1 year and after working with all of the stakeholders and landlords, we had 100% compliance and actually have won awards for this policy.
Thank you. Emily Koski.
Thank you. So I believe that to ensure that this is not a burden, that we need to make sure that we bring all voices to the table. So that includes that and making sure that we're including the landlords, with the property owners, the renters, and making sure that everybody has a voice at that table and make sure that people really feel that they're being listened to. That's what I've heard from all of these different groups is that they've been ignored, and I want to make sure that they have a voice at the table.
Thank you. Next question. Minneapolis 2040 is a comprehensive plan that shapes how the city will grow and change. The plan covers topics such as housing, job access, the design of new buildings, and how we use our streets. What are your thoughts on the Minneapolis 2040 plan in its current state? Are there specific parts of the plan that you would champion? And are there any that you would wish to amend? Albert Ross, you're first.
Thank you for that question. I've had a chance to go over the 2040 plan, and I think that it's a start. I think that we can do more, but nevertheless, it's a start. And I think what we need to do is we need to look at that plan and see how we can make it better to include all people to be a part of that plan. And I think that Minneapolis will benefit from it if we can get it in motion and if we can do the things that we say we're going to do. If I'm elected to represent Ward 11, I will make sure that I bring ideas to that 2040 plan that put all people at the forefront of it, so no one is excluded and everyone is included.
Thank you. Dylan Gurna.
Absolutely. So much like I mentioned before, we're really good at, as a city, talking and putting things into fancy documents that make certain groups of people feel good. And what I would like to see us do with the 2040 plan is kind of use it as a guiding principle, but we really need to refine this plan. Similar to Albert's point, we can't forget that these type of plans and initiatives have to include all members of our community. And I support a balanced approach to housing, as I mentioned, and I want it to include all modes of transportation, and I want it to make sure that we look at all types of housing, and that we also factor in public safety and how that's going to interact, both in the housing challenges that we face, and certainly from a business and economical standpoint.
Thank you. Jeremy Schrader.
Oh, thank you. So the comprehensive plan, the 2040 plan, is a requirement for every city that is in the Met Council region. We needed to have that plan forward, but it is just a framework. You know, I think my colleagues here hit it right on, that we need to build on that. Some of the things and my critiques of the plan is that it did not create affordable housing. It wasn't supposed to. It was something that just was a framework to where would we build that. So that's why I authored the inclusionary zoning ordinance to add on to 2040 to make sure affordability would be baked into everything that we do. It also did not say how we're going to be more sustainable as a city, and that's why I authored the sustainable building policy to make sure that we are going beyond state building code to create much more affordable homes, much more energy efficient homes to think about the future. And finally, after listening to my neighbors, the main concern with 2040 was not just really the density, but how the city would feel. Would it feel too big? Would people be building right up to the sidewalks? And that's why I limited the building to the framework of what was there before 2040.
Thank you. Emily Koski.
Thank you. Yes, I believe in the goals of the 2040 plan, but it's also overwhelming. There are over 800 action steps, and I think if we broke that down, that's about 3 per month. And I think we all know that the city does not work quite that fast. And what I've heard from our Ward 11 residents is that in this process of the 2040 plan, they felt really ignored. They did not feel that their voices were heard. They may have had a meeting, but they didn't actually, their ideas were not considered when thinking through what was going to be happening and what was going to be implemented with the 2040 plan. So I would like to make sure that we have a 2040 plan committee in our 11th ward. I hope that other wards will adopt this. So as the action steps are being implemented, that we make sure that we have a checks and balance and we have people in our ward connected to making sure that we're striving towards the goals of the 2040 plan.
Thank you. Kurt Michael Anderson.
Thank you. I want to discuss 2 specific parts of the 2040 plan. Number 1 is transportation, and there I give it a strong thumbs up. Just today, I rode one of the green bikes downtown and back. It's one of my things that I do about once a week, even in the pandemic. And I appreciate the transit service that we have in Ward 11, and occasionally I have to get in my Prius. So I really do appreciate what they've done with transportation. The critical part, and the part part where I have issues with it is the zoning overlays. That is to say, as other people have expressed in response to this question, the changes in density, the neighborhood disruption, the 20 years of uncertainty for homeowners and persons who wish to develop. But I strongly support affordable triplexes, duplexes, if they're tied to home ownership, and that's what it's all about. I want to see promotion of home ownership in our living situation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next question. What do you see as the role of neighborhood associations, and do you plan to support funding your Ward 11 neighborhoods at a level where they can continue to offer similar levels of programming as they did under the former funding structure? Dylan Gurna.
Yeah, so I think as we, have talked about tonight, having our neighborhood organizations sponsoring these type of events are critical to educating the community. You know, throughout Ward 11, our neighborhood associations have done a fantastic job of engaging with community, creating unique events, and ways to educate the community. So it's something that I absolutely support, and I would like to see us just really enhance the work and the engagement between community members, both existing and new members to the Ward 11 community and throughout our city.
Thank you. Jeremy Schrader, sorry.
No, you're good. No, absolutely. Before becoming elected, I was the vice chair of the Hale Page Diamond Lake Neighborhood Association because I believe in neighborhoods. There is something special about having a geography-based nonprofit organization that's able to really exemplify and get the neighbor's voice out there. I plan on continuing to support neighborhoods. If you don't get your question asked tonight at this forum, show up at a neighborhood association because I'll likely be there. It is something that there have been some changes that have been kind of starting in process. I am in favor of the proposals that would really increase the equity focus of neighborhoods. I did work during that process to make sure it's something that we take what's good about the current structure and really add an equity lens to that and make sure that we really are reaching all of our neighbors and everyone feels included.
Thank you. Emily Koski.
Thank you. Yes, the neighborhood associations truly are a fabric of our communities, and I will 100% support them. I was also on the Waite Park Community Council when I lived in Northeast Minneapolis, so I know firsthand the incredible work that a neighborhood association can do, the education that it brings, the programs that it connects our community to, and I want to make sure that we continue to fund them and continue to support them fully.
Thank you. And let's see, Kurt Michael Anderson.
I suppose I could just say yes and stop there. I do appreciate the work that my neighborhood association has done. It's Tangletown, and even though I live on the square blocks on the north end of Tangletown, I appreciate the work it's done. It's a great way to make sure that the communication between government and the community gets right down to the grassroots.
Thank you. Albert Ross.
Thanks for the question. I think that we need to do, I think when it comes to neighborhood associations that we have to do more to provide incentives to those organizations that go out of their way to attract people of color. I think that our neighborhood associations are doing a terrible job at attracting people of color. It seems as if they're only attracting one crowd. I visited a few and I wasn't happy with what I've seen. I won't say any names. I won't say any names of any organizations, but if I'm elected to represent Ward 11, I'll make sure that we add incentives to those organizations that do a better job at reaching out to people of color so they can be involved in the process. And right now, we only got one group of people in those organizations making those decisions that's involved in the process. And we got to reach out with our community to get people of color involved in the process.
Thank you. We've gotten a couple of questions on Facebook, so I want to be sure to get to those. First one, many small businesses in the area are struggling or closed because of COVID. How will you support businesses in our district? And how can we help our business corridors grow in a sustainable fashion? Jeremy Schrader.
So that's been a focus of my time in office. It is something that down in Ward 11, we don't have the density to really get the foot traffic that other businesses see in Minneapolis. And so that means we need to pay a lot more attention. I've been very hands-on to reach out to business owners to make sure that they're aware of the city programs. You know, a lot of them they may not live in the city, so they may only know about the state programs and things that are offered. But the city also keeps an eye and makes sure that businesses are really have resources too. Another important thing is we do have minority and women-owned businesses in the ward, but we do not have the same focus. Other areas of the city have cultural districts. They have areas that were, hit with because of the uprising, and that's where the funding has been focused. And it's important to have a strong voice in Ward 11 to make sure the businesses are able to have access to those funds as well.
Thank you. Emily Koski.
Yes, if elected, I want to make sure that we have a small business liaison within our city coordinator's office. I think that this is, work that is being done a little bit at the city, but I really want to make sure that we have someone that's really there to connect and serve our small business community. As a former small business owner myself, I know what it's like to kind of try to navigate within the city, and I've also even had several phone calls from people who are small business owners within the city. It's hard to navigate. It's hard to understand. It's hard to know what resources are out there. And I want to make sure that we have those provided for our small businesses. And especially as we move out of this pandemic, we need to make sure that we are continuing to support our BIPOC and our women-owned businesses too.
Thank you. Kurt Michael Anderson.
Well, thank you. My wife and I have a combined 53 years in unincorporated small business. Number one, with small business, what does small business want? It wants people to get out of the way so they can do their thing. But I think also that it wants to know that we have a secure environment, that they can build their businesses. They're not going to get their windows smashed. They're not going to be victimized by petty crime. And I think basically create the environment that lets them do it, not government do it. On the other hand, I do want to make a statement of support for fair wage levels. I do support the minimum wage initiatives the city has taken. I do think that's one of the fair demands that we can make on small business, that they comply with the living wage goals of Minneapolis city government, city ordinance.
Thank you. Albert Ross.
Thank you. Me being a small business owner, a minority owned business, I'll be the first one to tell you that the system is just not set up for people of color. That system needs to be tore out, broken down, stripped away, and thrown away. We need to come up with a whole new system that includes everybody. My small business had struggled tooth and nails to get any kind of funding through the COVID process from the COVID dollars that came to our city. I mean, we struggled, and we still didn't get any help. And I'm pretty sure I've heard that story 1,000 times from other people of color and minority-owned businesses. If I'm elected to represent Ward 11, all you folks with small businesses, get ready. I'm going to go out my way to make sure you get funding and get the help that you need so you can be successful and be able to provide for you, your family, and your family's family. Thank you.
Thank you. Dylan Gurna.
Absolutely. So as a former small business owner myself, like some of my colleagues here, I know firsthand what it takes to start and run a business. And, my company supported individuals and other business owners in consulting services. And so I know firsthand some of the struggles that our business community face. And we need to remove the barriers while also adding in support and resources. And by barriers, I mean our over-complex permitting and licensing processes. And I like Emily's idea with creating a position that is dedicated to being the liaison between our business community and the city services. Public safety is at the forefront of this conversation. Business owners or entrepreneurs are not going to invest in our city if their customers don't feel safe and their employees don't feel safe. I want Minneapolis' future to send the message to individuals around the country that Minneapolis is open for business.
Thank you. Another question from the Facebook page. How would you plan on connecting with all community members, whether they share your perspective or not, to build trust, get input, and give updates on your work? How would you be accountable and your work transparent? Emily Koski.
Thanks. I think this is a great question. And I want to stay, like I said, immersed in our community, and I think that's one of the best ways that you can continue to build trust. Like I mentioned, I coach at Pearl Park. I have been dedicated in our schools. I want to make sure that I'm open and available. My husband doesn't always like this answer, but in the past, one of our past city council members, he actually opened up his home once every other week and had people that were available to come right to their home. And I want to make sure that people have my cell phone. I want to make sure they know that I'm accessible, and I will hold myself accountable to this because it's just who I am. I am a connector, and I want to make sure that people feel seen and heard, and that's what I've heard that our community wants, and so that's what I will do.
Thank you. Kurt Michael Anderson.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, the media may be the message. I have made a demand on myself in this campaign that when I get a questionnaire or an email, I answer it within 24 or 48 hours. And I think if you look on my website, you'll see that I've succeeded at that. So you have to model it, you know. Number two is, yes, the phrase is management by walking around. Well, in this case, I need to walk around to meet my bosses. My bosses are the constituents in the 11th Ward. I've also mentioned that it's important to get around other parts of the city too, so we have a deep connection among different parts of the city. But yes, I got to be there, got to take the heat. I signed up for it, and got to be out there.
Thank you. Albert Ross.
Thank you. Well, all you folks out there in Ward 11, you know that me and a handful of volunteers have been to every door in Ward 11, except apartment buildings, just because of the security issue with those. But if you look on your Ring camera, if you look on your camera systems, you'll see me and a handful of volunteers passing our message out. And that's how we'll connect to everybody in the community. If we got to do it again, we'll go door to door. We love to work out. We love to get out and meet with people and talk to folks. But I just want to remind you guys, again, the system is not set up for black, brown, people of color. It's set up against us. And so we struggle every way possible to make ends meet in this system. If I'm elected to represent Ward 11, I will get in there and rip that system apart, and we'll make that system to where all people can have a good way of life in our community and not just one group of people.
Thank you. Dylan Gurna.
Absolutely. So as Kurt mentioned, the folks that each one of us up here are running to represent are our bosses. And we need to be intentional about creating spaces to listen and engage and to take the heat when we may take an unpopular stance on an issue. And I think it's important, and one of my commitments, to create space to engage with our constituents prior to making decisions, if at all possible, to hear all sides and all perspectives of a given issue or a policy stance that I may take. And it's creating innovative ways to engage, both through open office hours, being accessible, and then also showing up when things are difficult. This is not a Monday through Friday 9-to-5 job. And, throughout my leadership experience, I've always embraced an open door policy, and that will not change, nor has it changed at all in running for office.
Thank you. Jeremy Schrader.
Well, I think Dylan put it exactly right. It's not a 9-to-5 job. In fact, it's a every day of the year, 24-hour job, and that's how I've led. Whether that has been getting phone calls on holidays and following through when people are in need, to having a weekly newsletter to make sure that folks are educated and have an opportunity to understand really what's going on at City Hall. I've had Besides the weekly newsletter, I've had over 100 town hall meetings, and as well as office hours almost every other week. I've really practiced accountability and practiced accessibility to make sure that we're getting every voice in Ward 11 heard. And that hasn't been easy. It is something, I thought Albert put it best, that we don't have a system that is set up for everybody, especially those in black and brown bodies. And that's why I've also door knocked, not just on an election year, but to make sure to go door to door in every community to ask, how people are thinking about the city.
Thank you. Okay, I think this may have to be our last question. How do you propose addressing climate change in your role to win the city council? And Kurt Michael Anderson, you're first this time.
Step one, do your own personal audit of your climate footprint. Mine includes a bicycle membership, a transit pass, and a Prius in the garage. But beyond that, I think that we need to be accountable top to bottom in the same spirit in everything that this city does. We have set some very reasonable goals, I think achievable goals, and we should continue to pursue those. But again, considering the size of the task, the gravity of the task, like I say, once again, the medium is a message. I've tried to begin with step one.
Thank you. Albert Ross.
Thank you. What I would do is I would definitely work with our scientists to combat climate control. That was the question, right? Okay, I would work with our scientists. I don't know the answers. I'm not an expert when it comes to climate. And so I would definitely work with our scientists, those guys who's been at the forefront of the battle since the beginning. They know everything that needs to be done to make sure that we have a prosperous, safe future and that we can tackle any climate that comes our way. And so I will definitely use those guys' voice to make sure that we're doing just that. And you go on my website, it's www.albertross.org. We have a ton of great answers of things that we can do to make sure we combat the current climate change issue that exists in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Dylan Gurna.
So similar to what Albert said, I would not sit up here and pretend to be a scientist. I wear a lot of hats, but that is not one of them. So I do think that we need to listen to the experts and take the advice of individuals who spend each and every day working in this space. And I think we need to be intentional. As Kurt mentioned, we have a lot of goals as it relates to climate in this city and how we sustain the work that we've already achieved and continue to make investments to support residents and businesses throughout our city as it relates to renewable solutions and also green solutions. As we look to develop, we need to be intentional about it. But one thing I think is important to consider as we develop new policy from a city standpoint is that we take climate into consideration in every decision we make. How is it going to impact and what's the long-term impacts? We need to start looking a bit further than we are currently in how we legislate.
Thank you. Jeremy Schrader.
So we are in a climate emergency, and it shouldn't be the last question on this. Like, we need to be doing absolutely everything we can, and that's how I've led. I am the author of declaring a climate emergency, which is only words until we back it up with actions. I have been the author of the social cost of carbon to make sure the city is accounting for our emissions in every single purchase that we're doing. I previously mentioned I'm the author of the residential energy disclosure because there is so much more that we need to do. Next year, we'll be revamping our climate action plan, and we need to be serious about addressing the size of the problem with solutions. I've been a never-ending voice for much higher standards of energy efficiency in homes, and I think we need to, what I like about Kurt's point about a personal audit is we need to do much big more than that. We need to do an audit out of every area we do emissions and reduce that quickly.
Thank you. Emily Koski.
Thank you. Yes, I first think that we need to acknowledge that we are in a climate crisis and we need to increase our education. I believe that even our neighborhood associations. Those are organizations that we can continue to lean on. They create programs that help support and link our neighborhoods so that we can do the work on an individual and family basis, and I'm grateful for those. We also need to make sure that we're leaning on other organizations that are help to combat our climate crisis and continue to do that work. Even next week, I'm going to plant more pollinator plants through the Great River Coalition, and it's those types of organizations and those types of events that we need to make sure that everybody understands and has access to.
Thank you very much for all these good answers. For the closing statements, which will be 90 seconds, we're going to reverse the original order. We'll start with Albert Ross.
Thank you. All right, I appreciate you guys for having me here today to try and pass my message off to see can I win you guys over to represent you in Ward 11. First, I'd start with saying today our nation is facing a racial reckoning. And if we don't bridge this racial gap, our city will not prosper. Like Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Every person in this room, even the moderator, have benefited off of racial injustice and racial policies that has been put in place to keep black, brown, people of color from prospering in this city. Except me and one other guy that's in this room, camera guy. If I'm elected to represent Ward 11, I can guarantee you that I will be that candidate that bridges the racial gap that currently exists in our community so our community can be safe for all people. And I can promise you one thing, Minneapolis Police Department ain't going nowhere. We're gonna get the officers that we need to patrol our street, and I promise you I will keep you safe. Vote for Albert Ross. Go visit our website at www.albertross.org. Send us a message. Let us know how we can work together to make our community safe. And thank you for having me here tonight.
Thank you. Kurt Michael Anderson.
Well, thank you. I want to work right off that because I think that's a very good start. I want to segue right off that, which is, here's a mantra for us. I realize that sitting at the Lake Harriet Bandshell listening to music that I loved and seeing about 3 black people there. The mantra is, if you want to keep what's culturally beautiful and wonderful about Minneapolis, strive to find ways to share it. And also to appreciate the cultural contributions that other people are bringing in. And so let's work on broadening those opportunities. But let me also talk about what happened here tonight. First, I have to express the greatest appreciation to my 4 colleagues up here. This is a very politically charged year. We had a very, very informative and civil discussion. I can't appreciate that enough. Thank you, all 4 of you. And also, just want to say, my website is all about text. I've respected your time and my colleagues' time. I've been brief, but the text is all there. I really encourage you to go there. Kurt Michael Anderson, 2021.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Emily Koski.
Well, thank you so much for having us here tonight and having this opportunity. I've learned an incredible amount, and I'm grateful for this opportunity. I think it's clear to see that we need to make sure that we have leaders on our city council who are going to bring all voices to the table and who are going to work together. And I want to make sure that I'm that leader. I want you to know that I'm a connector, I'm a strategic problem solver, and I'm going to bring a balanced approach. So we need to make sure that we have leaders that are going to be thinking towards our future, making sure that we bring all voices to the table, like I said. And that doesn't mean just having their voice at the table. That means that every single person is going to have the opportunity to speak and to be able to have a leadership role and be able to connect with our communities. And I want to make sure that that happens, and that will definitely happen under my leadership at City Council. So again, I'm Emily Koski, and I ask for your support on the Minneapolis City Council.
Thank you. Jeremy Schrader.
Thank you. I think to start out, I wanted to share, I didn't grow up in Minneapolis, but after a career of fighting for what I believe in, I was able to choose where I wanted to live and where I wanted to start a family. And I chose Minneapolis, and it has been fantastic. I chose Minneapolis because I believe it really exemplifies my ideals of equity, of sustainability, as well as opportunity for all. And I am so thankful for everything that the opportunities the city has offered me and my family. It is something that I am dedicated to this city. That's why I do this job. And after the extremely hard year that we have had, I think we need to also admit that we are not the equitable and just city yet. You know, it's going to be up to all of us to really work to create that city, to create the city that we've intended for so long. And that is, you know, one, I'm really proud to represent Ward 11's work on that. You know, this is an important election. You know, we are at a crossroads. We need to make sure that we are not just a city of good intentions, but that we show the world we can come through on what we say and really become that just and equitable city that I know we all want. So I want to thank the League of Women Voters as well as my colleagues here tonight. My name is Jeremy Schrader, and I hope for your support.
Thank you. Dylan Gurna.
I want to start out with a sincere thank you to all of my colleagues up here. As Kurt mentioned, this is an extremely challenging time for our city and certainly to be involved in political circles. I also want to thank you all at home or whatever method you are watching this in and those who have hosted us tonight. Our city is faced with tremendous challenge, but I do believe and have hope in this city. It's what brought me here at 18 years old, and it's what I hope keeps me here throughout the rest of my life. I have hope in the residents of this city and the businesses of this city, and we absolutely have to get it right. Everyone has to use their voice starting this Friday all the way through until November 2nd. We need everyone to show up and vote. I hope that I can earn your first choice vote. There's a lot more information about my stance and my vision at my website, dgmpls.com. Thank you all.
League of Women Voters Minneapolis and myself would like to thank all of you for viewing this Ward 11 City Council candidate forum tonight. We'd especially like to thank our candidates for being part of the democratic process by running for office and for being willing to serve our community. And that's the feeling I've gotten from all 5 of you. I would have a hard time voting in this election, I think, and I'm really glad that the voters will have at least 3 choices, because you guys are all, you know, very good people, and you know, Minneapolis will be, Ward 11 will be well served by you guys. Thank you also to the Hale Page Diamond Lake Community Association, the Nokomis East Neighborhood Association, Tangletown Neighborhood Association, Wyndham Community Council, and the League of Women Voters Forum Committee for your hard work to make this event happen. There's never enough time to get to all the questions and all the issues. And so if you feel that your question was not addressed tonight, please contact the candidates, and that, you know, they can get to them all by their websites, and so that you can find out what they feel about issues that are important to you. The League of Women Voters also researches issues important to our members and to the health of our communities. If you're interested in finding out more about what we do and how you can also make a difference, please go to the website lwvmpls.org. There you can view our recent public safety study, a Minneapolis municipal election guide, along with a questionnaire filled out by the candidates. You can find more information about the candidates and about voting at mnvotes.org and lwvmn.org. Links to all the candidate forums and additional voter information can be found at lwvmpls.org. Again, thank you so much for coming, and remember to vote on or before November 2nd. Thank you all.
Thank you.